Diabetes, we spend $1 trillion plus of government money on diabetes management. Until 2018, the American Diabetes Association, which sets the standard of care for diabetes, says that if you take your drugs, you can eat whatever you want. They literally said that on their website. They said you can continue eating whatever food you want. And just real quick, back to the statins, the metformin, these drugs, I would argue actually they are. I'd argue actually
that they're
statins.
Causative.
Absolutely, because what's happening is when you're given a statin, it's like this solves the problem. Right? When you're given metformin, literally the American Diabetes Association is saying you can eat whatever you want. Now with Ozempic, you have Dr. Fatima Stanford at Harvard, on 60 Minutes saying that obesity is genetic, that it is, quote, not tied to food or lifestyle.
That is crazy. There is no universe in which that was said.
What's that?
There's no way.
On 60 Minutes.
False. Not
on
possible.
60 Minutes.
There's no way.
And she said, food, it's a relic of the past to tie food. And she said it's, quote, a brain disease and genetic. This issue that's only been an issue in the past 50 years. So think about this. This is the
food is not implicated in obesity, according to this person.
Everyone should watch Dr. Fatima Stanford, who's the lead obesity doctor at Harvard, talking on 60 Minutes. She is paid tens of thousands of dollars a year by Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic. And of course, this new field of obesity medicine stands to gain lifetime patients. So Dr. Fatima Stanford at Harvard has also said that it is, quote, structural racism to not have government funding for Ozempic. So let's go back, we're going all over the place here. I think it's good. I think this is a complicated, multifaceted issue, but let's go back to the NAACP, right? This is actually crazy. So the NAACP, the number one issue for African-American children, right? It's skyrocketing rates of diabetes, obesity, which is really setting their lives back. Obesity is cellular dysregulation, particularly in the brain. You're over 2 times more likely to commit suicide or have depression if you have, pre-diabetes or obesity. Excuse me. Diabetes is cellular dysregulation, and obesity is the visual manifestation of that. That's the problem. Right? Like the problem is that there's not great habits and we're eating inflammatory food. So the NAACP didn't look at that. They said, let's keep soda. Now you wouldn't even believe this. The NAACP is being paid by Ozempic to argue that it's a civil rights issue to give those same kids Ozempic. Okay, and here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with the statin metformin, the siloing of conditions. When patients are told the statin solves the problem, the Ozempic solves the problem, and don't change what they're putting in their bodies, it's just so simple. Patients are continuing to put inflammatory food into their bodies, which leads into other, unlucky conditions. They leads into other comorbidities. 80% of people with diabetes have at least 3 other chronic conditions. I was born at 12 pounds, large baby, clear sign that she had metabolic dysfunction. She got high fives from the doctor. Oh, it's a big baby, great job. Gestational diabetes, everyone has that. A couple years later, she had high cholesterol, statin. It's a rite of passage, no problem. A couple years later, metformin, pre-diabetes, it's fine. 50% of people, 60% of people your age have this, not a problem. Hypertension medications, oh, it's fine. Not even a blip, these are rites of passage. So she has all these comorbidities. And then she's taking a hike. She feels a pain in her stomach. She goes and gets a scan, has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and is dead 12 days later.
Jesus.
Pancreatic cancer is a foodborne illness. Every single one of those instances, right, from my birth on, was an opportunity. It was a warning sign. These things are connected. They're not siloed conditions. Heart disease is not a statin deficiency. Obesity is not a Ozempic deficiency. So I do think it's very causal. And I think this ridiculousness of asking for the peer-reviewed studies to show that we shouldn't be eating highly processed shit is playing on the wrong game. We're the only animal in the world that's systematically obese and metabolically dysfunctional, aside from the animals that we've domesticated and feed our food. Like we don't need studies for this. You don't have systematic rates of diabetes and obesity among wild wolves, but dogs that we've domesticated have a 50% cancer rate and a 50% depression rate. Looking around at kids concerned, I think there is just an uprising and just indignation of what's happening to kids in this country. There's big lobbying groups for Coca-Cola, no lobbying groups, the fact that 30% of kids now are pre-diabetic. So I just think that this whole idea People want to be healthy. That is a premise I refuse to be dissuaded of. And people need the information. And the first message that I'm trying to establish is the first part of bottoms up is understanding the systems that you operate in and having the courage to speak out. When the American Academy of Pediatrics, the majority of their funding comes from pharma. They receive millions of dollars from the maker of Ozempic. They receive millions of dollars from makers of diabetes drugs, right? And they say that the first thing a kid should eat is highly processed grains. They're arguing that...
Whoa. Where do they say that?
The American Academy of Pediatrics pediatricians give a pamphlet out, and they say the first thing a child should eat is little puffs. Literally, that's what the recommendation
from breast milk to Cocoa Puffs.
To puffs, which is just absurd. Obviously, if you think about just how we're biologically and evolutionally made, what to eat. And of course, the American Academy of Pediatrics, with absolute violence happening against kids, as we're subsidizing tens of billions of dollars for soda.
Why do you call it violence?
Because we have violence occurring to the cells of children. Prediabetes is violence occurring to their cells. A child born today, right, a teenager has a 45% rate of obesity or being overweight. The 20% fatty liver disease rate. 40% of 18-year-olds right now qualify as having a mental illness.
Whoa.
The American Academy of Pediatrics, which is credentialed to set the standard of care, for how children are treated in the United States. A doctor will be reprimanded if they go against the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines. They were nowhere to be found during the food stamp debate with Coke. In fact, I was helping to engineer payments from Coke to the American Academy of Pediatrics, which accepts processed food money. At that time, I saw as Coke funneled millions of dollars to the American Diabetes Association.
That's crazy.
The American Diabetes Association accepted money from Coke, millions of dollars. They said that small cans of Coke, might be a good idea.
Might be a good idea or doesn't hurt as much?
It was on the website that small cans of Coke might be an option for diabetics. Also, the group that credentials and sets nutritionist policy accepted money from Coke. So that was a huge strategy. So they gladly accepted money. And now the American Academy of Pediatrics, instead of saying, that a child who's 12 and obese needs to learn how to eat whole food, not eat ultra-processed food, and not be sedentary, so they can live a mentally and physically healthy life and be a productive member of society, they are saying that child needs a shot, a weekly shot of Ozempic, which the label...
And you're a racist if you don't let
which the label says that you should take it for your entire life, not go off of it, or you will have massive metabolic dysfunction. I mean, just going to kind of, I think, where the lack of leadership, moral cowardice is, you can take this to every institution. I met with a lot of venture capitalists for my new thing, right? A lot of them are investing in this sick care system. Alexis Ohanian, this guy that's very vocal on social justice issues, is on the board of Roe and is tweeting now how it's an urgent imperative.
What's Roe?
Roe is Roe's the largest direct consumer, one of them of Ozempic. They're putting up billboards in New York City saying that millennials should be getting Ozempic. And they're writing blog posts saying it's an urgent national imperative
to get
for government
Ozempic?
Funding for Ozempic, for 80% of the population who's obese or overweight, to steer instead of $2,000 a month of government money, which is what Ozempic is, instead of steering that to better food, we need to steer that to Ozempic. You have leading investors now saying that that's an urgent national imperative, who are also talking about other social justice issues. He's not a bad person, this Alexis Ohanian guy, but if we're really concerned about that 12-year-old, particularly an underprivileged 12-year-old, these incentives have blinded us. And I do think that's violence to kids. I think there is an absolute lack of moral clarity among adults who are paying their mortgages, and buying their houses in the Hamptons, and going on their vacations funded by a sick care system. I mean, this is a material part of the economy. 78% of states in the United States, the largest employer, is a hospital system or a food retailer, Walmart. These are the really, by some respects, the two largest industries in the United States. So people's mortgages, and then just take it to the investing and the consulting, for these industries. It's such a massive part of the economy. We've been blinded, I think.